All right, let's dive in. We're about to break down a pretty fascinating argument, one that claims a 2,500-year-old prophecy is directly connected to the headlines you're seeing today. And it all revolves around this idea called the prophetic pattern.
So I know what you're thinking. A dream from 2,500 years ago? How could that possibly explain what's happening right now? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. This is a very specific interpretation of biblical prophecy, one that says there's a hidden pattern tying it all together. It's a pretty bold claim for sure, so let's dig in and see how they build their case.
Okay, so where does this all begin? We have to go way back. The starting point for this entire theory is found in the story of the prophet Daniel and a really disturbing dream that was haunting the powerful king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Now, what the source material points out here is pretty interesting. God apparently gives this super important prophetic dream to a pagan king, someone outside the faith, but then he doesn't give him the interpretation. This sets the stage, you see. It makes it necessary for a prophet, in this case Daniel, to come in and reveal what it all means.
So what was in this crazy dream? It was this giant statue, like a man made of all these different materials. You've got a head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, and so on. Daniel comes in and explains that each of these sections represents a major world empire, in sequence, starting with Babylon itself as that head of gold.
But for this particular theory, we're not focused on the gold or the silver. We're zooming all the way down, right to the bottom, to the feet. This final part of the statue, they argue, represents the very last human superpower to dominate the world stage right before a huge prophesied event.
And here's the crucial detail. Look at what the feet are made of. It's this really weird mix of iron and clay. Iron, that's all about raw strength. It's fierce. But clay, that's fragile. It's weak. So the idea is that this final kingdom is going to be a powerhouse, for sure, but it's also got this built-in weakness, this internal division that makes it totally unstable.
All right, now we're getting to the first major linchpin of this entire argument. And believe it or not, it all comes down to a single word. One specific word used in the original Aramaic language to describe how that iron and clay are mingled together.
That word is alev. It's the root word used 4 times right here in Daniel, and it means mixed or mingled. According to the source we're looking at, this one little word is basically the key that unlocks the whole rest of the prophecy.
So then the speaker makes a pretty direct linguistic jump. They argue that this ancient Aramaic word, alav, sounds an awful lot like a modern word we all know, Arab. That's the connection they're drawing. Now, to back this up, they point out that this isn't some brand new idea. The source cites a respected Jewish philosopher, a guy named Abraham ibn Ezra, from way back in the 12th century. And apparently he looked at this exact same passage and predicted it was talking about a future mingling between, as he put it, the remnants of Christianity and the followers of Ishmael and Islam.
Okay, so from here, the argument starts to zoom out. The claim is that this whole idea of a dangerous mingling isn't just a one-off thing in Daniel's prophecy. Instead, they say it's a repeating pattern, a pattern that you can trace all the way back to the very beginning of the Bible. And when I say the beginning, I mean the very beginning. The source connects this dream right back to the Garden of Eden. Think about it, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's presented as the original example of this pattern, something that mixed the good with the bad, where the good part was basically just seductive camouflage to hide the destructive truth.
So this really gets to the core of the proposed pattern. It's about an ancient spiritual war that the source says was kicked off way back in Genesis. The whole argument is that this wasn't just some old story that happened and ended. No, the idea is that this exact same conflict is still playing out, right here, right now.
But this raises a really big question, doesn't it? If this whole mingling pattern is so bad and destructive, why on earth would anyone fall for it? Why would people willingly embrace ideas that seem so self-destructive from the outside? The speaker tackles this head-on.
And the explanation they give comes from a theological concept called the Strong Delusion. The basic idea goes something like this. If people reject the truth again and again and again, eventually God basically lets them have what they want. He sends them a powerful delusion so they'll fully believe the lie they've been chasing.
The speaker frames this as a really painful kind of lesson. It's almost as if God is saying, fine, you want this? I'm going to give you exactly what you want, but you're not going to like it. The whole point is to teach you that the thing you want so badly is not actually the thing you need.
Okay, we're at the final piece of the puzzle now.
And it involves, you guessed it, another linguistic claim. This one, though, comes from a different book, from a vision in the book of Zechariah.
So, in this vision from Zechariah, there's a curse that goes out over the entire earth. And the source here claims that the specific Hebrew word used for that curse is Allah. This isn't just any curse, though. It's described as the direct consequence for violating a sacred oath or a covenant with God.
Yeah, this curse is really specific. It's the penalty that a nation faces when it was in a covenant with God and then just broke it, turned its back. And to connect it all back, the source points out that Daniel himself uses this exact same word in Daniel chapter 9 to explain why Israel was suffering in Babylonian captivity. He said it was because that curse had been poured out on them.
Okay, let's do a quick recap and put all the dominoes in a row. First, you've got the dream of that final kingdom, the one mingled of iron and clay. Second, you have the Aramaic word alav, which is interpreted as pointing to a mingling of east and west. Third, this whole idea is framed as a seductive pattern of good mixed with evil that started back in Genesis. Fourth, people who fall for this are said to be under a strong delusion. And finally, this all leads to the curse, which the source identifies with the Hebrew word Allah as the penalty for breaking a covenant.
So, when you step back and look at it, this whole interpretation is weaving together ancient dreams, very specific linguistic claims, and biblical history, all to create one single cohesive story. It's a framework that really tries to make sense of the world, to find order in what can feel like chaos. And it leaves you with a pretty big question to think about. What is the power of a pattern that seems to explain everything?